Hey, it's Jamie Scrimger. When I became a stepmom, I quickly realized that while moms are encouraged to keep it real, there's a big double standard when it comes to stepmoms. So I decided to start the conversation myself. Thriving as a stepmom doesn't just come from conversations about being a stepmom, though. Here, we dive into marriage, relationships, personal growth, and more. My mission? Inspire you to live a kick-ass life while bringing you along as I create my own. This is the KICK-ASS Stepmom Podcast. Hello. Welcome to the show. All right, we have Mindy Kyle back on the podcast today. So Mindy Kyle is a fellow stepmom coach, and I just love talking stepmom life with her. She is a mom of two. She is a stepmom and now a grandma stepmom, a grand stepmom. I don't even know how we say that. Anyway, we talk about all things stepmom life, adult stepchildren, having step-grandbabies, how stepmom stress does not end when the kids are 18, and why your partner needs to have your back. We also talk about our mindset around step parenting and what happened when we decided to do the work on ourselves, shifting our mindset, and things we wish we understood in those early stepmom days when we were both in the trenches. Mindy also shares the evolution of her relationship with the ex, a very embarrassing moment that she had where she was like, crickets, and how it evolved and led to them taking a selfie together, framing it and giving it to the kids. This is a good one. Mindy Kyle, she is a gem. Let's dive in. Mindy, welcome back to the podcast. How is it going?
Good. I'm so glad to be back. It's been a while, but I'm really excited to be here.
Yeah, it has been a while. Okay, so let's start out. Just give us a little bit of an update on where you're at in your little rundown on your step family life, because you guys are into the adult stepchildren situation. So what's up? What's going on over there in terms of family dynamic, and how old are the kids? What's going on?
Yeah, I mean, we're in the thick of it when it comes to raising kids with our two. And we have a 14-year-old and a 13-year-old. And so we're in the middle of one's transitioning out of middle school into high school, and one's ready to be in their last year of middle school. And so we've got that going on. And then we've got 4 grandbabies now. I've got 3 granddaughters and 1 grandson that came. He's going to be 2 in November. And, we've got kids in college, and we've got different stages of life all playing out at the same time. It's just an interesting place and stage to be in as a stepmom, because not only as a mom of my own children, I'm navigating my first time having a middle schooler or a high schooler, and that's a different experience, even though I've been here before with my stepkids, right? It's just a whole different experience when you do it on your own with your partner, and it's your bio child, but then also just navigating this new stage of supporting adult kids and what that looks like, right? As they really start to make their way in the world and have their own children. And then what's my role as a stepmom? So I think that's where I'm at, is things are ever evolving, and learning how to shift this role is sort of what I've been focusing on lately in my life.
Mm-hmm. And so just to clarify for people who maybe aren't familiar, the 2 younger ones are yours, you and your husband's together. And then the grandbabies are your, how do you even do that? Step-grandbabies?
Yeah, I call my grandbabies, but yeah, they are my stepkids' children. Yeah, so my 2 oldest stepchildren, because I have 4 stepkids, all adults. My very youngest of all of my stepkids is 21. They're really in the truly adult phase of life, right? And then the 2 oldest have kids. So my oldest stepson has 3 daughters. He's actually a stepdad himself. So the 2 older girls are his stepdaughters, and then his youngest is his. And then my stepdaughter has a little boy that she had almost 2 years ago.
Yeah, you definitely are in so many different stages. So what would you say when people say, well, we just have to get to 18, it ends at 18?
I would say that is not the truth. This continues it's a lifelong commitment. Let's just say that. This is never going to be a finish line that you cross, because really when you think about it, these relationships are going to be present in your life forever. Right? Because they're your partner's kids. And so what that looks like does shift and change, your involvement or your access to them or how much, there's coming and going and all of that, that shifts and that changes. But really, these are his kids. And so the relationship continues. I mean, you're still going to have holidays. You're still going to have big events. Like one of the things that I think I learned really quickly when my stepkids became adults and started getting married and having all these life events is I was shocked because I thought when we get to 18, this is just going to be so much easier because we don't have the shared custody. We don't have to really co-parent. It's just going to feel so much easier. But what was interesting is that as I had never had so many required shared events with BioMom as I did when the kids became 18. And one of the things I think that we don't realize is you're going to have little daughter-in-laws or son-in-laws, right? Your kids are going to probably get married. And when that dynamic shifts, those people coming into the picture, they don't have history. They don't know what came before them or maybe the way that the family used to operate, right? The kids are all sort of used to the dynamic and the way the parents like to do things. But that new daughter-in-law or that new son-in-law, they don't have any of that information. And so when she has her first baby, for example, and she wants to host like the baby's first birthday, she shouldn't be required to, make all these accommodations, in my opinion, for all of the, parents. Like, are we going to have 2 baby birthday parties? Are we going to have 2 baby showers? Like all of those things are things that are going to be one-time events. And so I didn't anticipate how much of that was going to come into my life when the kids became 18.
I'm a huge lover of Element. It is my go-to electrolyte drink and a longtime sponsor of the podcast. So yes, Element is a tasty electrolyte drink with everything you need and nothing you don't. That means lots of salt and no sugar, no artificial ingredients, no coloring, no BS. It is formulated to help anyone with their electrolyte needs and is perfectly suited if you're following a keto, a low carb, or a paleo diet. I just did the metabolic reset, which I've shared about on the podcast, and it was totally okay on that as well. Basically, if you're a professional athlete or you're just an everyday mom, it is for you. Element is a huge part of my day-to-day, whether it be rehydrating during workouts, when I'm traveling, after maybe a little too much wine, in my cocktails and my mocktails. Like I am always popping the Element salt into my drinks. 100 milligrams of sodium, 200 milligrams of potassium, 60 milligrams of magnesium. I have one every day. Seriously though, about the cocktails, throw in some lime Element salt with soda, tequila, lime, and mint. It is so delicious. So staying hydrated is a crucial and huge priority of mine. And proper hydration isn't just about drinking water. It means having adequate water and salt. And big news, Element just introduced Element Sparkling. So again, no sugar, there's no caffeine in this, all electrolytes. Element Sparkling delivers the same zero sugar electrolyte formulation that I have been telling you guys about, now in a bold 16-ounce can of sparkling water. I couldn't have got better news. This is so exciting. I am such a fan of Element. Already put it in my soda water. So this just made my life so much easier. Element Sparkling offers health seekers an all-new option to support their health across the board spectrum of occasions. So with each can, you're taking a sip against sugar and stimulant-loaded drinks, and you're turning the tide towards health. I am so pumped for this. To grab some Element, head to www.drinklmnt.com/KICK-ASS Stepmom and get a free sample pack with any drink mix purchase. That's just the drink mix purchase. I love these free sample packs because it just gives you a chance to try all the flavors and decide which one is your fave. Mine is watermelon. Darren loves lime. Head to www.drinkelement.com/KICK-ASS Stepmom to get a free sample pack with a purchase of a drink mix and keep your eye out for the new Element Sparkling. Seriously, cannot wait. Guys, let me tell you, the last few months have literally been a whirlwind. I've had a lot going on, both personally and professionally, and my husband Darren has been the same. Like our to-do list is insane. with kids' appointments, getting the cottage ready for the summer, doing some property rental stuff, dealing with business things. It is endless. And so staying in the loop and up to date on everything that we have going on has been a huge challenge. That's where Coupla comes in. This is an app that is designed to help couples manage their time and their responsibilities more effectively so that you can focus on what really matters, each other. So, with a shared calendar and a to do list, which is super helpful, and reminders, and then also a date planner and a chat, Coupla has everything that you need to keep your life organized and balanced. And Coupla's calendar actually keeps you both on the same page because you need to remember pick up and drop off and your next weekend getaway and to do lists and date planners. Like it is all in there. And then with the built in chat, you can coordinate and communicate seamlessly about all of the stuff going on in your world. It's also a really great way to stay in the loop about changes in the schedule with your stepkids so that you're not blindsided by a schedule change that your partner forgot to tell you about. Has that happened to you? Because it's definitely happened to me. The good thing about this Coupla app and keeping things organized is that if you're in a busy season of life, when you do get time together, you're not spending it talking about all the things that you have to do because you're all on the same page and in the loop with everything in the shared calendar and the to-do list. So exciting news, we are offering an exclusive deal just for our listeners. Coupla is giving you 3 months free. All you have to do is use the code Jamie at checkout. That's right, 3 whole months free to see how Coupla can transform your life and your relationship. So why not take a step back from the chaos and focus on what truly matters, which is your relationship. Download Coupla today and start enjoying more quality time with your partner because when you're together, you don't have to worry about all of the logistics. You can focus on reconnecting after the crazy busy schedule. So head to the App Store now and use the code Jamie for 3 months free for Coupla, Coupla. Trust me, you won't regret it. Coupla, Coupla in the App Store and use the code Jamie for 3 months free. How do you handle those joint events? Because I know there's a lot of stepmoms who that's very common. They usually have joint events. It's just kind of part of the situation. And then we don't really have anything joint. Everything's pretty separate. I'm sure it will be together as the kids get older, but what's that like over there for you?
I think at first it was jarring, right? I remember the first time that we sat down. I actually think in my last podcast interview, we talked about this.
Mm-hmm.
I had a dream about talking to the ex and sharing with her how I had a dream about her and we took the selfie together and I shared it with her at it was the dinner or whatever. And I shared it with her and it didn't go over so well. She didn't find it funny.
She didn't find your dream funny?
No. No, I don't remember how much I shared of this before, but essentially the night before the wedding rehearsal dinner, I had this dream about the kid's mom that I came up to her and I said, it'd be so funny if we took a selfie together and we sent it to the kids for Christmas. Wouldn't that be so great? Let's frame it and send it to them. And in my dream, she was all on board and she thought it was great. And we took the selfie and we gifted it to the kids for Christmas. And I told my husband, I said, we've never sat together at a table. We've never had to do this. She sat right across from me. We've never had to do this. What if I just break the ice and I tell her my dream? Just trying to be funny and lighthearted. Let's make fun of this thing. And I think my husband thought I was crazy. He's like, really, Mindy? You're going to tell her this dream? An attempt to bridge the gap here. And I said, yeah, I'm going to do that because I want to show up as myself. I'm tired of playing small and not taking up space and not being because that's who I would be. I would be funny and make light of the situation, right? And I told her the dream and it was crickets. I don't think she got the humor. But fast forward, because it's been a while since we talked. My stepson got married and at the next wedding, my stepdaughter's wedding, we laughed about it and we took a selfie. And we did gift it to the kids for Christmas.
Well, there you go. It worked.
It did, but there was a lot that happened in between. So the backstory is this. We spent over 10 years high conflict. And I really got to the point where I was accepting that nothing was going to change. I was okay with it. This is who we are. This is who she wants to be in this moment. I respected it. I understood that she was on her own journey and her own timeline. Mine looked different than hers, right? I was ready to sort of just put things in the past and move forward, but she wasn't. And I accepted it and I moved on from it. And what's ironic about that is about the time that I came to terms with the reality of what was, she became a stepmom. And about a year later, she reached out to me and said, "Can we sit down and have lunch?" And of course, at first I was like, hold up, wait, why? Why do you want to sit down? Because in the past, it had been a lot of conflict and I didn't totally trust it. So I asked her for some clarification, like, what am I walking into? What do you want to talk about? And she said, it's nothing. I'm not going to bring up old things. I just really want to talk to you about all that has happened in the last, at that time it was like 12 years. So we had lunch, and her becoming a stepmom opened her eyes to the role. And she essentially apologized for 12 years of very, very high conflict situations and her judgments and maybe how she treated me during those years. So a lot happened in order to have that selfie. But it was interesting because I never thought that would happen, and then it did.
Yeah, I think that's so interesting you're sharing that, because I think I've told this story on the podcast before. So there was a time where things were just getting so high conflict, and I was just overwhelmed and I was stressed. And every time my phone went off, I felt like anxiety. I didn't know I was just we were in it. And I was like, I'm done. I don't need to communicate anymore. Like, I need to get myself out of this. Darren was in court during that time. It was just so much going on. I was like, I'm out. I just can't. Darren, you got to take the lead on this. Cause I had always taken the lead on a lot of things when it came to the kids, because I was home. Darren was building his business. Darren was out till 8:00 at night. Like, I was here with the kids and they were young. So I was like, I'm going to shift this. And I totally disengaged and stopped with the communication piece for a while. And I reached back out a couple years later, and there was never a conversation about disengaging. Like, I know stepmoms sometimes are like, how do I disengage? How do I have to tell everyone? I'm like, you don't have to tell anyone anything. You can kind of just shift how you're showing up. There was a parent teacher meeting. Darren and I were going to go meet with my stepson's teachers. And I reached out and I was like, hey, do you want to come? Like, do you want to meet us there? This is what we're doing. I just felt like I would want to know. Right. And she's like, yeah, actually, do you want to drop Reese off here? She can stay here with Zach. So you have childcare during it. I'm like, yeah, okay, totally weird. Right. Like, things are really good. We go to the house and she hops in our car to drive together. And I'm like, oh my God. First of all, there was a burger in my back seat. My car was disgusting. I was mortified. I was like, oh, for God's sakes. I didn't think she was going to freaking get in my car. But we went and she was pulling up a stool for me. And I just felt so included and welcome, and just during the whole thing. And I was like, what is going on here? Because that's not typically the dynamic. And I did reach out and I said, thanks. You did make me feel really included in this. That was nice. We could all do that together. I just sent a follow-up text. And she says, well, she was dating someone who had kids and she was in a stepmotherly role. And she said, I've learned a lot and have a different perspective because of this new relationship. I'm like, yeah, I bet you do. Right. And it's great because you don't know what you don't know, but it is interesting when, the ex becomes a stepmom.
Yeah, I think we all talk about this as coaches and women who support other stepmoms, that this is one of those roles that you really cannot fully understand until you're in it. You can look at it from the outside and think you might understand some of the struggles and the complexity from just a logical standpoint, but you can't fully understand what it feels like to be a stepmom and the emotional complexity of that, the cognitive complexity of what am I allowed to do? What am I not allowed to do? What feels good? What doesn't? What we assume is going to feel good isn't always what feels good. It's really confusing. And I think, a lot can be said for lived empathy, right? And how it shifts your perspective. And what's so fascinating about that is available to us before we have to live it. It's just a lot of us don't choose to opt into that empathy, right? Because it feels hard and it feels challenging, and creating empathy for another human really is like physical work, right? You have to sit with it. You have to open yourself to the idea that their experience is very real to them. It's very true for them. And sometimes hard to do that, especially when you feel hurt by that person. I think one of the hardest things for me, looking back, because tomorrow is actually our 15-year anniversary. And so we've been doing this 15 years, and I look back at the journey we've been on, and that girl that was 5 years in and was hurting and felt resentful and couldn't understand why, the kid's mom wouldn't embrace me and didn't accept me and really wasn't being a team player and helping the family work as a whole. And I just didn't understand it. And now 15 years in, I look back and I'm like, we both were suffering. We both were struggling. It was hard on both ends. And I get it. It's hard when that person's causing, struggles and conflict and not making your life easy. It's tough to give them empathy because you're like, yeah, I see a lot of ways you could have done better. Like I see the ways you could have shown up better for the family.
100%. And I think a lot of stepmoms really struggle with this when I talk about empathy to them. Empathy and grace for the high conflict X is what I talk about. And, hurt people. And they're coming from a place of like insecurity and fear. And I always get like well, I don't care. Like she can't do this, or I'm not feeling empathy for her. She's the one who left her marriage, like the whole thing. Right. And look, like it doesn't make it okay for someone to be disrespectful to you or to be mean to you or to be hurtful. But I think there can be just a little bit more softness when you're like, wow, that is a hurt person, right? Like they are on their own healing journey.
I think it goes back to this. When we trust ourselves to take better care of ourselves, we don't feel the need to harbor that anger and resentment. Because really what it boils down to is most of us don't trust in our ability to care for ourselves and to set boundaries. We have proven to ourselves that we're people pleasers. We bend over backwards. We disregard our own emotional and mental well-being for the benefit of others, right? We caretake really well for other people and typically not so great for ourselves. And so what that teaches our nervous system and our mind is that it's that person that's causing the problem, when really it's not them that's causing the problem. It's that we're not doing a good job of taking care of ourselves. Like if we knew without a shadow of a doubt that we would have our own back, that we would not participate in things that felt bad, that we would fill our own cup, take care of our own self-care as a priority, like a first priority, I don't think we would harbor as much resentment because our needs would be met. But the problem is we don't meet our own needs. They come last, right? And we also are afraid to set boundaries. Oftentimes we're like, well, is it mean to say no, that I'm not going to pick up and drop off the kids because it wrecks my week? Is that not being a supportive wife or a supportive, stepmom? And I think we second guess and we end up putting ourselves out there in ways that's really not healthy for our mental health or our nervous systems. And that's what creates this feeling of, I can't trust her. I'm resentful of what she's put me through. I can't hold empathy for her because she's caused this harm, when really we've got to look at ourselves. Like we're really upset with ourselves, really, when it comes down to it, because we're not protecting ourselves better.
Yeah, for sure. And I think so much of our worth as stepmoms is wrapped up in the acceptance from her. Like you want her to accept you and her to see everything you're doing. And maybe that's not true for everyone, but I know a lot of stepmoms are like just waiting for that acceptance and acknowledgement and all of the things that a lot of stepmoms never ever get. And when you become okay with you and the role that you're playing and your relationship with the kids, what that may or may not look like, your partnership, like outside of her. Like I was having a conversation with one of my coaching clients right now, and we're going back and forth. And I'm like, how do we get you out of the mindset where you're thinking so much about her and you're thinking more about your relationship with your stepkids, your relationship with yourself, how you want to show up for you, like all of that. Like when you can shift over that way, and she's going to do what she's going to do. That is so outside of our control. But I think it's that lack of control and then the grief and then the different expectations and all the things that come with that person. I think that's where we get really tripped up as stepmoms.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I think that need for recognition is big for stepmoms. And that needs to probably be one of the first ties you cut when you come in, is this idea and expectation that she will have the capacity to give you that, right? Because that's really what it is. It's whether or not she's got the capacity to, one, recognize all that you do in the midst of maybe her own grief and loss, and two, to even verbally recognize you for all that you've done. That's a whole nother level of self-awareness and putting her ego aside. because the mother role is loaded, right? There's a lot of complexity with that. And even the narratives in our society about, your self-worth and your self-esteem and your value coming from motherhood and how you show up. And when women lose that and they share it 50% with another woman, I think that triggers a part of us that we didn't know existed. And for us as stepmoms coming in, we're attaching, just like you said, our worth to this role. And so you've got these two competing narratives from both sides, right? Like, who's going to win that battle for worth is essentially what it feels like, right? She wants the title. She wants to win it. She's got all the rights in the world, and she's the birth mom. She was here first, all those things. And we're coming in and we're like, yeah, but I love these kids and I'm taking care of them and they're not even mine. So we feel like we deserve something for that too. And so, yeah, it's this competing narrative. And I think when we are able to let some empathy into the picture and really just focus on taking better care of ourselves, right? So I always say to stepmoms, set your value system early. What are your values as a stepmom? Who do you want to be, right? Get clear on that really early so that you know if you're succeeding. How else do we know if we're succeeding if we're always looking for external validation from everyone? Because then you're just chasing a finish line. You're chasing a response. You're chasing a reaction, right? It'll drag you all over the place looking for that, and you'll never feel good. But if you set the finish line, if you create the standard, then you know if you're succeeding, right? You can say, this is who I want to be. This is how I want to show up consistently. This is the type of stepmom value system that I have. And if I'm doing that, I know I'm doing a good job. Then you're not looking for her to say, wow, you're amazing. You're not looking for your partner. Oh my gosh, you're such a great supportive role for my kids. Because you've already laid it out and you've decided this is who I want to be. And if I meet that mark, I know I've done a good job. Then you can feel a lot more comfortable in how you are showing up.
Yeah. And I think there needs to be those conversations with your partner, right? I think sometimes we go in, or so often we go in, and there's no conversation about like, what does the stepmom role look like? Because it looks very different for different families. Like, I know for me, I was doing a lot of the motherly things, like the pickup, the drop off, the appointments, the snowsuits, like all of the things. I was doing so much. And I don't think there was ever even a conversation about it. And it was just kind of, I think, landed on me. It was like the expectation, and this is what this will look like. And I think if we would have had those conversations at the very beginning and really, got on the same page about like the division of responsibilities, or what he saw me as a stepmom and how I saw myself as a stepmom, and how would this work together? And then the other piece is revisiting that, right? Every couple of years you can be like, hey, like, do we need to shift anything? How's everything going? Like, that communication piece, I think, is really lost. And there's a lot of assumptions, which leads to hurt feelings and disappointment and just people not being on the same page about what this role looks like, regardless of what the ex is or is not doing.
Yeah, that really resonates with me a lot. And I did the exact same thing when I came in. And I think I always say this, we know that stepmoms struggle a lot more than stepdads statistically, right? And I think the reason why, and there's probably many reasons, but one of the reasons why is gender roles. When a stepmom comes in, typically they're kind of fitting the old role, essentially, right? They're stepping into the spot where the mom existed. And I find that to be probably the worst way to start out the blended family. Well, it's probably very beneficial for our partners, but for everybody else, it's tricky, right? Because when you resume that role of sort of mom of the house, it can be hard on the kids because they're sort of trying to adjust to this new person. And now you feel this very big role in the home, and that can take time, and for them to feel comfortable with you taking that role on, for you showing up in that way because they were used to mom showing up in that way. And then for you, I think a lot of stepmoms, when we step into that role, we do it because we see a need. We're really great at people pleasing and meeting needs in the family. Like, women are so intuitive. We see a gap, we'll fill it, right? We just step in and take over. And I think that's a really beautiful part of, the female experience and just stepmoms in general. But ultimately, we find that stepmoms burn out so quickly when they just step in and do all the things, because it seems like a good idea in the beginning, but what they come to find is it's not a traditional role. Like in a nuclear family, you have less control and power over the situation. And so you end up feeling like you're doing with no real say over bigger decisions. And that can be really tough.
This episode is sponsored by BetterHelp. Okay, guys, I'll be straight. This year has definitely been a challenging one for me. From relationship challenges to parenting challenges to things we just don't have any control over. It's just been one thing after another. And when life is really challenging, I do think it's important to take a moment, not only to process what you're going through, but also to take a moment to celebrate your wins. I fully believe that when we're focusing on all the things that are going wrong, we can't see all of the things that are going right. And therapy can be a really helpful tool for you to not only process the challenges that you're going through, but stay on track and celebrating your personal wins, because there are lots of wins. Now, after taking a little break from therapy this year, I have gone back, and it has really helped me have a different perspective on a lot of the things that have been affecting me in my life. Throughout my adult life, therapy has been one of the tools that I have used again and again to navigate challenging times and relationships and personal block. It's a really helpful tool for learning positive coping skills and setting boundaries, and it just empowers you to be the best version of yourself. It's not just for those who have experienced major trauma. I do really believe that everyone can benefit from therapy. So if you were thinking of starting therapy, first of all, do it. I swear by it. And second of all, give BetterHelp a try. It is entirely online, designed to be convenient and flexible and suited to your schedule. All you have to do is fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist. And if it's not a fit, you can switch your therapist at any time for no additional charge. Take a moment to visit betterhelp.com/stepmom today and get 10% off your first month. Get some things off your chest with BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/stepmom to get 10% off your first month. That's betterhelp.com/stepmom. Since red light therapy has become all the rage, I have been dying to get my hands on a red light therapy professional mask. And I recently was able to make that happen. So I've been using the Valfleury Professional LED mask, and I'm loving it. I've become super invested in doing what I can to keep my skin feeling tight and healthy and smooth. I'm coming up on 38, and red light therapy has become a regular part of my regime. So here's the deal. The Valfleury Professional LED mask is medical grade light therapy proven to enhance your natural skin. So the mask emits 3 clinically proven wavelengths of red, yellow, and blue that penetrates deep into the skin. So it stimulates collagen production, it diminishes fine lines and wrinkles, it reduces the signs of sun damage and aging, and just promotes healthier, younger looking skin. The mask has settings for red, blue, and yellow light, which is unreal. So you can just switch the light with a click of the button. So the red light therapy reduces fine lines and wrinkles, reduces the appearance of pigmentation and redness, and just promotes healthier, younger looking skin. Then the yellow light therapy rejuvenates skin cells, smooths inflamed skin, boosts lymphatic flow, and promotes anti-aging. And then the blue light improves skin texture, helps remove sunspots and acne, and even scars that were originally caused by acne. So it's kind of like a 3-in-1. There's no downtime. You just do a 10-minute treatment for 3 to 5 times every week for about 4 to 6 weeks, and then just follow maintenance as desired. I'm already starting to see a difference. I have also been using the 360 LED skincare wand. So picture just a little wand that you put on your skin. And this has actually been my favorite. So the skincare wand combines 4 science-backed skincare treatments in one. And it's this portable, rechargeable tool. So if you're traveling, you can just bring it. No big deal. Super easy. So it has red light therapy, a current, facial massage, and therapeutic warmth. So I've been putting it under my eyes, and you can just kind of go back and forth on your problem areas in just 3 minutes. And this addresses fine lines, puffiness, blemishes, dark circles, dull skin, and maturing skin. So Valfleury is giving listeners of the KICK-ASS Stepmom Podcast a 20% off their order, which is huge. So if you go to www.valfleuryskin.com, that's www.valfleuryskin.com, and use the code Jamie20 at checkout, you can get 20%. I highly recommend adding the LED face mask and wand into your skincare regime. www.balfleuryskin.com and use the code Jamie20 at checkout for 20% off. Now, something you said on your Instagram, I would love you to unpack. You said, I spent too many years as a stepmom just waiting for someone to show me what I was supposed to be doing and who I needed to become in order to make all of this somehow work. I spent too many years thinking all the answers existed somewhere outside of me, only to learn along the way that coming back to myself, trusting my own intuition, and learning my own knowing and my own values and own desires for the stepmom role, that I was what I was waiting for all along. No one outside of me had the answers. The guru I was looking for was right here all along. Stepmoms, it's time to come back to yourself and your own knowing. Can you unpack that for me?
Yeah. You know, when I hit my breaking point at about 7-8 years in, it was like one of two things were going to happen. I was either going to divorce my husband because the anxiety was so intense and I was miserable, or I was going to have to find a way to make this work that was aligned with my mental health and my nervous system and finding joy and peace again. And I knew in that moment that when I was making the decision to go to this retreat in Sedona, that this was like a make it or break it situation for me, because prior to that, my anxiety had gotten to an all-time high. Like I was not coping well. I felt like essentially on transition days, it was like you're at the top of a roller coaster about to go off and your stomach just feels like it's going to drop through the floor. That's what I felt like on transition days. And it was becoming unmanageable. But what was ironic is that our high conflict had really been good the last 6 months prior to that. Like it had been the calmest it had ever been. And I couldn't make sense of why now? Like before we were dealing with intense high conflict and all these issues, and then it had calmed down. And then that's when my anxiety skyrocketed. And what I've come to learn is that when you're in the thick of it, right? When things are coming at you left and right, your nervous system does a really, really great job of protecting you. You're not in the state of that you can process and work through stuff. When things calm down, your nervous system is like, oh, okay, now we're going to process what we've been through. Now it's going to surface. And that was really a hard reckoning for me because I thought I'd been through all of this and I did okay. And now it's calm and I'm the worst I've ever been. So I went on this retreat. And one of the things that I found was that I was abandoning myself left and right. I was looking for everyone else to tell me how to do this. I wasn't tapping into what I needed. Each stepmom has such a unique journey. Their family dynamics are unique. Their childhood experiences are unique. Their own family of origin is unique, right? We are all so complex and unique. And trying to look at the outside world and expecting everyone else to give you answers for what's right for you, right? It's like looking for a guru to tell you how to live your life. I was looking for that for years. Like, just tell me I'll do it. I'll do whatever it is, like, please. And I understand the need for that. But really, I feel like what gurus do best is they bring you back to yourself. If you hire a really good coach, they're going to teach you how to listen to your inner knowing, to listen to what you need, because no one knows what's best for you other than you, right? And when somebody sells you this idea or tells you like, we'll do X, Y, Z. And yes, tools and strategies are great, right? We all need education. But when somebody's really handpicking what you should do with your life, big red flag. And that's what I was looking for. I didn't want to do the work. I was scared of the work. And one of the things I've come to realize is there's no shortcut out of this. You've got to go through it. You've got to figure it out on your own. You've got to tap into what you know to be right for you. And it's hard. It's so hard. And I went through a long process of getting comfortable with the uncomfortable, right? One of the places I got to was, Mindy, you're choosing this. And it needs to be a hell yes or a hell no if we're going to make this work. And I had to get to the place of, it's going to be a hell yes because I want to be married to this person. And every time something's hard, I always tell myself, there is always an exit. Right? I can't play the victim here, right? Yes, it's hard, but I'm choosing this and we'll figure it out and we'll make it work.
Yeah, I had Sarah Jane Case on the podcast, and she's an Enneagram expert, and she's also, it's a really good episode if you haven't listened to it. And she talks about her experience as a stepmom, and what she said, she's like, I choose this life and I can unchoose it at any time. And I think that brings back the power. And I always share that in all my like webinars and coaching stuff. I'm like, we can choose this and unchoose it. And that makes you realize like, oh yeah, I'm not stuck here. Or like, we're not stuck dealing with any of this. And I find that really, really empowering. Something you said there about your anxiety after everything calms down. That's literally how I experience anxiety too. I was driving in the car the other day with my husband we were just going to a cottage weekend, and I have an anxiety attack. I'm like, it's like my body's like, oh yeah, I had this for you, but you couldn't handle it at the time. So things feel good right now. So here, I'm just going to I just saved this for you. Can you just deal with it now?
Yeah. It's like, well, thanks so much.
Yeah. But I do think when it comes to that personal growth and the reflection and working with coaches and all of that, it's all about learning how to ask yourself the right questions too, right? Like what I love about coaches and, just working with someone who's just a little further along than me in my journey is that they can see things that we can't see in our behaviors and how we're showing up, and almost like that calling out, you're like, oh yeah, okay, I am in my head right now, or I am focusing so much on things I can't control, or this really isn't a huge deal when you look at the big scheme of things. Because I think as stepmoms, we can get caught up just spiraling and just creating more issues that are not even there.
Yeah. Well, and it's how our brains are wired, right? We are wired to look for the negative because it's what kept us alive, right? When we were on the savannah, our brains are not wired to look for the positive. So we actively have to fight that if we want to change our lived experience. Because, if our life has been high conflict and lots of stressors and really not knowing what's going to come on transition day, if we've been conditioned and experienced that over and over, it now has become a red flag for our nervous system and our brain. And it's really hard. I mean, I'll be honest, it takes a lot of conscious effort to start to rewire those patterns and to fight back against the automatic response in your body and in your brain. But it's really worth it, right? Because if we just let go of the reins and we allow our nervous system and our brain to just take over, you will become so obsessed with all of the things you cannot control and all of the negative narratives and all of the fear mongering basically of oh, well, she could do this tomorrow. And what if we go back to court, and how's that going to affect my life? And what if I never have a say in any of this? It just goes down into this scary, dark spiral of all of the bad things, right? And we really have to be conscious about what we choose to give our energy to. Our energy and our focus is the most valuable thing we have in our lives, is what we give our attention to, right? Mm-hmm. It's what everything is vying for, is our attention. Like social media is vying for just one more second of your time, right? Marketing campaigns, one more second of your viewing time. What you give your energy to and your attention to is so valuable, and it's what's going to shape, the trajectory of your life. I always use this analogy with my coaching clients, and it's kind of a silly one, but it's stuck in my head, and it has really helped me to shape how I look at what I'm cultivating in my life. So if you were to go to the grocery store and essentially you're trying to make an apple pie, and you go into the grocery store with a list full of everything you don't want for that apple pie, how awful is that shopping trip going to be? Right?
That's so
why? Okay. That's what we do essentially as stepmoms. We're like, I don't want this. I don't want this to happen. No, I don't want that. But what ends up happening is we don't even know what we want, right? We're not even focused on creating what we want. So of course, if you're going to make an apple pie, you go to the store with exactly what you want so that you go in, you get it, and you make the results you want, right? Mm-hmm. That is what we have to do as stepmoms. What do you want from life? What do you want to cultivate? You have to make a list and be very intentional about your mindset, your life, your productivity. What kind of memories do you want to make? All those kinds of things need to be very proactive so that you actually focus on creating versus everything you don't want. Because you're not going to get anywhere if you just focus on all the things you don't want.
100%. I had this post the other day, and I said that one of the things that I'm really focusing on right now is living for the highlight reel. I live for it. And someone's like, are we not supposed to live for the highlight reel? Like, what does that mean? And it is a little backwards to, what we've been taught. But those moments in your step family life where like everything is good, like where everyone's laughing or you're sitting around the dinner table and everything's really good. And, maybe there was anxiety before, or maybe there was transition day bullshit, or maybe like you and your partner aren't on the same page about screen time or Nintendo, if that's even a word anymore, whatever. But those little moments where like everything feels aligned. And I think we go into our family life with this expectation. I think we do this as moms and stepmoms, thinking that life is going to be way better than it is, right? Like there's not going to be those as many mundane moments or challenges and all those things. But when you realize like that is just like a portion of your life, but like living for those moments when everything does feel aligned, I think that's a really good place to be, right? Like that's the point. Like, how do you want to feel? What do you want to strive for? Who do you want to be? And how do you want to show up as a stepmom when times are really tough? Like it's really easy to be a good stepmom when things are great, but like when you're constantly triggered and there's lawyers' letters and you're getting scathing text messages, like how are you going to show up then? Where's your best self then?
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I think you have to be very intentional about, again, those value systems. Like, who am I as a stepmom? Who am I as a person? Right? Like, line out or write down those values. Like, during conflict, who do I want to be? And use that as a little bit of a guide for how you choose to show up in these situations where you feel flooded and you feel angry and resentful. Go back to what you chose to use as that guidepost when you had all your faculties, essentially, right? When you weren't in a high stress situation and you had your cognitive abilities. Go back to that and look at your values and say, okay, so my value as a stepmom is that I am going to support my partner and support myself in high conflict, right? Maybe that's your value. And so what would supporting my partner and supporting myself look like right now? That's all you have to do. It doesn't need to be complex. It doesn't need to be, okay, in each situation, like what if the attorney, we get another bill from the attorney, or what if we get another summon to court, or whatever it may be. You don't need to get into the weeds with decision making. You just need an overarching value for every situation, right? How do I show up in integrity to who I want to be? Use that. And that can be applied to every situation, right? Whether your stepkids trigger you, or you're angry about how your partner chose to parent, or he forgot to include you in the new change of plans and it affects you. Like, all those things can be so hard and so triggering, but follow that value system and you will be able to make those decisions on the fly without having to use a ton of mental power when you're not feeling like you have it.
Yeah, I love that. Now, I'd love to switch back. What is the most challenging for you in the adult stepkid space? Because I'm getting a lot of questions about that right now. Like for me, we had my stepson living here. He wanted to be an adult, but forgot that he was still like living here. Like this is our family home. Like, that like you're an adult, but you're still dependent on us. You still have to respect the rules. Like that was a bit of a challenging situation for us. What happens over there? Give me some other examples. People can like be prepared for what's coming down the pipeline.
Yeah, I think it's a whole new phase in parenting because they're adults, right? So it's like air quotes parenting. You are trying to support young adults in their launching, essentially, right? And I feel like in today's society, it's much harder to launch. And so the launch period is a lot longer than it was when I was, 18. Yeah, it's a lot longer. And I think that's okay. It's the time period that these kids are living in, and it is very different than when we were kids, and they are trying to find their way, right? I think you have to be open to your role shifting. And really, again, it goes back to getting in touch with what you need, right? So there's going to be a lot of new stages and phases to navigate, like when stepkids have their own children. What does that look like in your role? How involved are you going to be as a step grandma? How do you navigate that, right? Because that can end up being a little bit of a turf war again, right? Because you've got new grandbabies and everybody's vying for their time and attention. And it's like, who's allowed first rights? Like it can get a little tricky. So you have to really start to define, what do I want first? That's really important. What's important to me? Is it coming from a place of I'm trying to prove that I have value here? Because that's a big one, right? Like sometimes we don't even want to have the grandbabies. I'm not speaking for myself. I love my grandbabies, but maybe we don't want to have them as much as we are pushing to have them. But it's simply because we're like, I just need to know I'm valuable here and that people see me as having a seat at the table. So get really clear. Is this because I'm trying to make a point? Is this because I'm trying to prove that I have a seat at the table, or is it something I really want? Right? Because it's not worth fighting for if you really don't want it. Like let's put the ego aside and let's actually lean into what we want. Right? I work full time. They call me Gigi for gangster grandma. I'm a young grandma. Okay. I don't have as much time as maybe their mom does. I can't do as many sleepovers as they can. So I had to get really, really clear and check my ego for a second. Like, what's realistic for me? What do I have capacity for with my grandbabies? And allowing space for her role to look different than mine, right? It's going to be different. And that's okay. I do really fun Gigi days with my 3 granddaughters, and we go shopping and we go get our nails done and go to lunch, and we have the best time. And that's what I like to do. We don't do sleepovers right now because life is crazy and I have 2 teens in the house. I already have kids sleeping over, right? But I had to check my ego because that's what the other house was doing. So that's what I mean. Like it's really about getting clear about what feels good for you and not doing the comparison game. Don't base it off of, oh, they're doing that, so I should be doing that. That's going to run you ragged.
Absolutely. And I think that goes for even when the kids are younger too, right? Like I think sometimes you get into that competition, like, well, they do this at this house, they do this at mom's house. Like I want to, measure up, or why is there a competition? Mom's always copying me. Like you just literally cannot get caught up in that because it's just, you're in the weeds and you can't get out. Once you spiral into that thought pattern and like comparing the 2 houses, you truly are going to be just like, yeah, in the weeds.
Yeah. And I think the relationship as the relationship develops into their adult years, the relationship has to be a lot more intentional if you want it to remain. You don't see them 50-50, right? And this is where whatever you created prior really starts to show up. So, the foundation for this relationship really is created when you had them 50-50 and that time was guaranteed. Now, it definitely evolves, and some of my relationships with my stepkids have gotten much closer as they've become adults and had life experience for sure. But really, that is the foundation that you're working from. And so if you want to keep a relationship going, it has to be very intentional. Otherwise, it just dies out when they become adults. And that's one thing that I have found that I have to make sure to make a conscious effort to invest in the relationships because I don't have guaranteed time with them. Right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You want them to want to come for dinner.
Yeah. And that's interesting, right? Because that's one thing I guess we don't think about a lot as stepmoms is like, well, yeah, they're going to leave someday. But the other side of the coin is we kind of want them to come back, right? Like we want to be able to have these family, gatherings and memories again. The foundation you're creating now is going to create that environment where they feel welcome to come back, or they feel like there's no way in hell I'm going back to dad's house, right? That was awful for me. So being more intentional is really important.
Yeah. All right. Last thing I want to dive in, something else on your Instagram. You were talking about your husband, and it was that, as the partner, at some point you will need to make the decision to prioritize and protect your current relationship over trying to keep the peace in your past relationship.
Mm-hmm. I got a lot of hate for that on TikTok.
Oh, you did?
Oh, yes.
Sidebar. Do you feel like the haters are really coming out right now? Like in the last little bit? Have gotten way more hate in the last 2 months than I have in however many years I'm doing this. And I've had some stuff go, outside of my community, and there's been some growth. So, but yeah.
Yeah, I have got a little bit more on Instagram. I'm not as active on Instagram. So on TikTok, one of the first things I realized was that you have to have a much thicker skin on TikTok immediately. Okay. So it is just a different beast. But 90% of my clients come from TikTok. So it's interesting.
Really?
Yes.
Most of mine are Instagram. So that's super interesting.
Yeah. So it's just a thicker skin over at TikTok. But yes, on TikTok specifically, that went pretty viral. And I got a lot of very, very angry, both sides of the coin about how that wasn't putting the kids first. And here's what I want to say about that. Your partner essentially prioritizing his now relationship and now partner over his ex has nothing to do with the kids. Let's clear that up because it really doesn't. He can be an amazing father. He can put his kids as one of his top priorities in life, prioritizing their needs developmentally, and still be prioritizing his current partner. So I don't think those compete. And so that's one of my biggest arguments with this is like, immediately people go to, that's harming the children. It has nothing to do with the children. We're talking about an ex relationship and a current relationship. Okay. And I think what happens with a lot of the clients I work with is we see kind of a passive approach from the, let's say, heterosexual. So if you're married to a man, the man is typically pretty passive about setting boundaries with his ex. And in an attempt to keep the peace, he's harming his current relationship, really harming. That post actually came from a conversation I had with my husband on a drive. I asked him, what shifted for you? Because it really, at some point, all of a sudden I noticed like he was prioritizing my needs first and prioritizing boundaries above keeping the peace. And it made a huge difference in our relationship. And I said, what shifted? And he said, I realized that I had a chance here to keep this second marriage strong, or I was risking another failed marriage. And so if I wanted to maintain my relationship long-term, that required me really getting clear about where my priorities were. And it needed to be with my current wife, period. That's who you're married to. You've got to prioritize protecting her. You need to prioritize setting boundaries. It doesn't mean you have to go to extremes and cause problems. That's not what we're talking about. I think people go there quickly, right? They're like, well, are you going to stir it up? Are you going to be hard or difficult? That's not what this is about. It's about boundaries. Clear as day saying, I will not tolerate that, or I won't engage in that behavior. Or if you continue to talk negatively to my wife, or blocking you, like those are very needed stances if you're going to protect your current relationship.
I could not agree more. Darren sometimes is like, every once in a while, it's like you don't poke the bear. I said, I get it, but there is a balance there. And he definitely has always come to my defense is like back in the day when I was the Pop-Tart. So there's the Pop-Tart Diaries when my blog first started.
I didn't know you named your blog that. That's so great.
That's when I first started. I called it the Pop-Tart Diaries. I didn't think anyone was going to read my blog. But my husband's ex called me the Pop-Tart because I was 13 years younger, blah, blah, blah. And he stuck up for me and he was like, no, you cannot call her that. But I was like, I kind of liked, it's like, it could be worse, But yeah, 100%. You got to have your partner's back.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Mindy. We got to do this again.
This was great. Yes. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
That's it for this one. Thank you so much for tuning in. And if this episode resonated with you, I'd be so grateful if you could share it with someone in your life who you think could benefit from it. And if you haven't already left a rating and a review on iTunes, it really is the best way to support the show. And if you're craving more real talk and coaching and community, be sure to check out my membership, the KICK-ASS Stepmom community. Head to www.kickassstepmom.com to learn more.